Software Engineer Training Advanced Tech. Today I am here to talk to you about the tool Kyverno. So first, let's understand what Kyverno is. Kyverno is basically a policy engine for Kubernetes. It is an open source tool which applies policies to our Kubernetes resources such as pods, deployment services, and namespace. Kyverno can be used to enforce policies to our Kubernetes cluster with best practices and security compliance. Now I will be discussing about the problems which I have faced before using Kyverno in the cluster.
Uncontrolled Kubernetes resource creation and updates. So, without proper control, anyone can create or delete any Kubernetes resource at any time, which can lead to security vulnerabilities, compliance violation, and performance issues as well. Next is lack of policy enforcement for security and compliance. So, Kubernetes does not enforce any Kubernetes security or compliance policies by default. This means that it is up to the cluster administrator to implement and enforce these policies manually. Complex and manual policy management. Manually creating Kubernetes policies can be complex and time consuming, which can be difficult to keep policies up to the date and ensure that they are applied consistently across the cluster. Limited visibility into the policy violation. So, by default, Kubernetes does not provide much visibility into the policy violation. This can make it difficult to identify and address policy violations promptly. Poor auditing and reporting. So, Kubernetes does not provide any built-in auditing or reporting capabilities for policy enforcement. This can make it difficult to track who made what changes to the Kubernetes resources and when. It can also be difficult to generate Kubernetes report on policy compliance as well. As a solution for these problems, we can implement Kyverno. So, enforce policies as code. So, Kyverno allows us to define policies as code in our Kubernetes YAML file. This makes it easy to manage and update policies and to integrate them with existing development and CI/CD pipelines. Prevent non-compliant resource creation and updates. So, Kyverno enforce policy at runtime, which prevents non-compliant Kubernetes resources from being created or updated. This helps us to improve security, compliance, and reliability. Simplifies policy management. Kyverno provides a variety of features to simplify policy management, such as policy inheritance, policy validation, and policy conflict detections. Integrates with existing security and compliance tool. So, Kyverno integrates with a variety of existing security and compliance tools such as CI/CD pipelines, security scanners, and observability platforms. This makes it easy to integrate Kyverno into your existing workflows and get the most of our investment. Provides visibility into policy violation. Kyverno provides visibility into the policy violations so we can quickly identify and resolve any problem. Audit and report on policy enforcement. Kyverno audits all policy enforcement activity and generates report that we can use to track the compliance and troubleshoot problems.
So now we will see the architecture of Kyverno. Whenever a request comes to the API server, then that request will go to the Kyverno. Then Kyverno will first validate the request. If any validation policy is applied in our cluster, then that request will be validated, and then it will mutate the resource. If any mutation policy is applied, then it will mutate the resource and then generate the resources according to the policies. After the policies are applied, and if the resource is according to the policies, then the request will further move to the etcd cluster. And if the resource is not according to the policy, then the resource creation will be terminated. So now we will see the implementation. In implementation, we apply some rules to the Kubernetes cluster. So in rules, we have two blocks, match and exclude block, and one of these. Match or exclude block basically defines the policies to the resource which we can apply. If we have used match block, then the policy will apply to the resource which we have mentioned in the match block, and if we have included the exclude block, then the policies will apply to the resource other than the resource which we have mentioned in the exclude block. After that, we have some rules here. In first is validate rule. So what it does is it basically validate the Kubernetes resources according to the Kubernetes policies which we have applied. And the next is mutate rule. Mutate rule are used to modify the resource before they are created or generated. And then generate rule. Generate rule basically generates some resources according to the policies which we have mentioned here. And then there is cleanup rule. Cleanup rule basically cleans the resource which no longer needed. Like we can specify that if any deployment has any pod less than 2, then we want to delete that pod, then we can apply some cleanup rule there. It will delete the pod deployment.
Use cases for Kyverno are: first is enforce resource limits. So Kyverno can be used to enforce resource limits for Kubernetes resources such as CPU and memory uses to ensure that applications don't consume too many resources and cause performance issues. Isolate namespace. So Kyverno can be used to isolate namespaces in Kubernetes environment, which helps prevent application from accessing resource from outside their intended namespace. Enforce pod security policies. Kyverno can be used to enforce pod security policies, which help control the security settings of Kubernetes pods. Implement custom naming conventions. Kyverno can be used to enforce custom naming conventions for Kubernetes resource, which can help to improve organizations and consistency. Enforce service account. Kyverno can be used to enforce the use of specific service accounts for Kubernetes workloads, which can help to improve security and compliance. Enforce network policies. Kyverno can be used to enforce network policies, which controls how Kubernetes resources can communicate with each other and with the outside world. And last is enforce node affinity. Kyverno can be used to enforce node affinity rules, which specifies which nodes a Kubernetes pod can be scheduled on. The benefits for Kyverno are: no new language requirements. Kyverno policies are defined using Kubernetes resources, which means that we can use same tool and skills that we already have to manage them. Extensive resources. The extensive resources available for Kyverno can be valuable benefits for users of all levels of experiences. Library of policy templates. Kyverno's library of policy templates is a valuable resource for users of all experience level. It provides a collection of pre-written policies that can be used to enforce a variety of security, compliance, and best practice requirements. This can save users a significant amount of time and effort and help them to get started with Kyverno quickly and easily. Policy enforcement. Kyverno enforces policies at runtime, preventing non-compliant Kubernetes resource from being created or updated. This helps to improve security, compliance, and reliability.
In conclusion, for Kyverno can be a useful tool for providing security to our Kubernetes cluster. It provides a number of benefits like improved security, better compliance, and improved developer risk. Kyverno can also be used to automate some tasks in our Kubernetes cluster as well. By using Kyverno in our Kubernetes cluster, we can get the visibility in our cluster, by which some tasks can also be completed fastly. Overall, Kyverno can be a better tool to use in our Kubernetes cluster.
With our 10 moves to make movement matter, we focused on how to help our colleagues to practice cultivation. Maverick program and roles definition created and socialized cultivation behavior to help people understand how they can bring cultivation to life and to provide them with a common language to describe action related to cultivation. One behavior doesn't exclude another, and all the non-stack people are invited to explore the behavior, play, and practice with them to find inspiration for their own way of cultivation.